In the heart of a stormy city night, a single moment can change everything. Katherine Ellis, heartbroken and drenched by rain, finds solace under a stranger's umbrella. Henry Whitaker, a man whose kindness hides a millionaire's secret. From a mistaken encounter to rediscovering a childhood bond, their journey weaves through betrayal, courage, and love's unexpected return. Will Kate overcome her past to embrace a future with Hank? Or will old wounds keep them apart? This is a tale of second chances, where a rainy night ignites a spark that could last forever. Where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments and let us know what you think. Subscribe and hit the bell to never miss a story. Trust us, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. Can a single act of kindness rewrite a broken heart story? Stick around to find out. The city pulsed with a restless energy, its neon veins flickering against a sky bruised with storm clouds. Katherine Ellis stumbled through the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan, her pale gold silk dress clinging to her like a second skin, heavy with water and despair. Her high heels, elegant but treacherous, clicked unevenly on the pavement, one strap flapping loose, threatening to betray her with every step. The cold bit at her bare arms, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her chest, a wound so raw it seemed to bleed with every heartbeat. Just hours ago, her world had crumbled, and now the heavens themselves seemed to weep for her. It had been a mistake to go to La Belle Étoile, the upscale restaurant where she'd hoped to reclaim a sliver of dignity. Kate had dressed carefully, the gold dress a quiet rebellion against the pain of her recent breakup. She'd wanted to prove she was fine, that Keith Langston's abrupt departure from her life hadn't broken her. But Keith had other plans. There he was, at a candlelit table, his arm draped possessively around Vanessa, a blonde with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Their laughter rang out, oblivious to the crowded dining room, until Keith's eyes locked onto Kate's. She froze, a deer in the headlights of his cruelty. Then, with deliberate slowness, he leaned in and kissed Vanessa, his lips lingering as if to carve the moment into Kate's memory. The room spun. Whispers rippled through the other diners, their pitying glances like salt in her wounds. "You were never enough," Keith had said, his voice low and venomous as she passed his table, her head high but her heart in shards. "Vanessa's the real deal." Kate didn't respond. She couldn't. She fled, the restaurant's warmth giving way to the biting chill of the night, her pride left in tatters on its polished floors. Now, the city was a blur of headlights and shadows. Kate's breath hitched, her vision clouded by tears. She refused to let fall. She'd always been strong, the one who held it together, through her parents' divorce, through lean years scraping by as an interior designer, through every rejection that had tried to dim her light. But Keith's betrayal was different. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was a public execution of her worth, a declaration that she was disposable. The thought clawed at her, each step heavier than the last. A sudden crack of thunder split the sky, and the rain came down in sheets, as if the universe had decided to mirror her turmoil. Kate's heel caught on the loose strap, and she stumbled, her knees slamming into the wet pavement. Pain shot through her, but it was nothing compared to the sob that tore from her throat. She collapsed there, in the middle of the sidewalk, her hands fumbling to tie the strap of her high heel. The silk dress, once a symbol of defiance, was now a sodden weight, its gold dulled by the storm. She didn't care. The tears came at last, hot and unstoppable, mingling with the rain that plastered her chestnut hair to her face. She was alone, utterly alone, and the weight of it crushed her. Passers-by hurried past, their umbrellas bobbing like dark flowers, their eyes averted. No one stopped. No one cared. Kate's fingers trembled as she tried to knot the strap, her sobs growing louder, raw with the grief she'd bottled up for weeks. She was a fool to think she could outrun this pain, to believe she could walk away from Keith's cruelty unscathed. The rain pounded harder, a relentless drumbeat against her skin, and she bowed her head, letting it consume her. Then, a shadow fell over her. The rain stopped, not the storm, but the drops on her skin. Kate blinked, confused, her tears blurring the world. A pair of polished black shoes stood before her, gleaming despite the deluge. Above, a large black umbrella blocked the sky, its canopy a quiet shield. She lifted her gaze, slowly, afraid of what she might find. A man stood there, tall and composed, his black suit impeccable even in the chaos of the storm. His face was striking, high cheekbones, a jawline sharp enough to cut, and hazel eyes that held a warmth that pierced through the cold. His expression was unreadable, a mix of concern and something softer, something that made Kate's breath catch. "Are you all right?" His voice was low, steady, cutting through the roar of the rain like a lifeline. Kate opened her mouth, but no words came. She was a mess, drenched, tear-streaked, kneeling on a filthy sidewalk. All right was a universe away. Yet his gaze didn't waver, and there was no pity in it. Only a quiet resolve that made her feel seen, not judged. She shook her head, a small, broken gesture. The man crouched slightly, balancing the umbrella to keep her covered. "Come on," he said, extending a hand. "Let's get you out of this rain." Kate stared at his hand, the rain drumming on the umbrella above. She didn't know him, didn't trust easily, not anymore. But something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, made her reach out. Her fingers closed around his, warm and steady, and for the first time that night, she felt a flicker of something other than pain. As he helped her to her feet, the storm raged on. But Kate sensed that this moment, this stranger, might just change everything. Katherine Ellis's trembling fingers gripped the stranger's hand, his warmth a stark contrast to the icy rain that had soaked her to the bone. The city roared around them, honking cabs, the relentless drum of the storm. But his steady presence carved out a pocket of calm. She rose unsteadily, her gold silk dress heavy and ruined, her high heel still dangling by its loosened strap. The man adjusted his umbrella, shielding her as he guided her forward, his steps sure despite the slick pavement. "There's a place nearby," he said, his voice a low anchor in the chaos. Kate nodded, too drained to question, her tears still stinging her eyes. They wove through the bustling sidewalk, passers-by blurring into shadows under their own umbrellas. Kate's breath hitched, her mind a tangle of shame and exhaustion. She'd fallen apart in front of a stranger, her raw grief exposed on a filthy street. Yet this man, whose name she didn't even know, hadn't hesitated to help. His silence was kind, not probing, and it made her feel less like a spectacle. He led her to a small cafe tucked between towering glass buildings, its amber glow spilling onto the wet street like a promise. The sign read, "Haven's Brew," and as they stepped inside, the scent of roasted coffee and cinnamon enveloped her, thawing the chill in her bones. The cafe was intimate with mismatched wooden tables and soft jazz humming from a corner speaker. A few late-night patrons glanced up, then returned to their books and laptops, uninterested in the drenched woman and her rescuer. "Sit here," the man said, gesturing to a corner table by a window streaked with rain. Kate sank into the chair, her dress clinging uncomfortably, her chestnut hair plastered to her neck. He set the umbrella against the wall, its black canopy dripping quietly, and shrugged off his suit jacket, revealing a crisp white shirt that somehow remained pristine. "I'll get you something warm," he said, heading to the counter before she could protest. Kate stared at her hands, folded tightly in her lap, her nails chipped from nervous picking. The memory of the restaurant, Keith's cruel smirk, Vanessa's triumphant laugh, flashed like a blade, cutting fresh wounds. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing the images away. But they lingered, taunting her fragility. The clink of a cup snapped her back. The man returned, placing a steaming mug of chamomile tea before her. "It'll help," he said simply, settling across from her, his own black coffee in hand. "Thank you," Kate murmured, her voice hoarse. She wrapped her hands around the mug, its heat seeping into her palms, grounding her. Up close, she studied him. His face was striking. High cheekbones, a faint stubble shadowing his jaw, and hazel eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. His dark hair was slightly mussed from the rain, softening the sharp lines of his tailored suit. He carried an air of quiet authority, but there was no arrogance, only a stillness that invited trust. "I'm Henry Whitaker," he said, offering a small smile. "But you can call me Hank." "Kate," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Katherine Ellis." She hesitated, then added, "I'm not usually like this." The admission felt like peeling back a bandage, exposing her vulnerability. Hank's smile didn't waver. "Rough night," he said, not as a question but an acknowledgement. He sipped his coffee, giving her space to breathe, to decide whether to share or retreat. The silence wasn't heavy, but it carried an invitation, and Kate found herself teetering on the edge of confession. She took a sip of the tea, its floral warmth loosening the knot in her chest. "My ex," she began, the words spilling before she could stop them. "He humiliated me tonight, in front of everyone." Her voice cracked as she recounted the scene. Not the details, but the weight of it. The kiss, the laughter, the words that branded her as less than. Hank listened, his gaze steady, his hands still on his mug. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer empty platitudes. When she finished, her cheeks burned with the shame of baring her soul to a stranger. "Some people tear others down to feel taller," Hank said quietly, his tone carrying a conviction that caught her off guard. "But that's their failure, not yours." His words were simple, yet they landed like a balm, easing the sting of her wounds. Kate met his eyes, searching for pity, but found only sincerity. She managed a faint smile, her first of the night. "You're kinder than you need to be," she said, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. The gesture felt clumsy, her composure still fragile, but Hank's presence made it easier to breathe. He leaned back, his expression softening. "Kindness doesn't cost much," he said, a hint of humor in his voice. "Besides, you looked like you needed a friend." The word friend hung between them, unexpected, yet comforting. Kate's heart stirred, a flicker of hope piercing the fog of her grief. She glanced at the rain-streaked window, then back at Hank. "I owe you for this," she said, her voice steadier now. She reached for a napkin, scribbling her number with the cafe's pen. "Let me buy you dinner sometime, as a thank you." Hank took the napkin, his fingers brushing hers briefly, sending an unexpected warmth through her. "I'd like that," he said, pocketing it with a nod. His eyes held hers a moment longer, as if memorizing her face. As Kate sipped her tea, the storm outside seemed to soften, its fury no match for the quiet haven they'd found. She didn't know what lay ahead, but for now, she felt seen. Not as a broken woman, but as someone worth saving. When they parted, Hank's umbrella over her once more, Kate stepped back into the night with a spark of something new, a promise that this wasn't the end, but a beginning. The Manhattan sunrise painted the skyline in hues of blush and gold, but Katherine Ellis barely noticed. She stood before her apartment's cracked mirror, smoothing the lapels of her navy blazer, her chestnut hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. Last night's storm, and the stranger who'd pulled her from its grip, lingered in her mind like a half-remembered dream. Hank's hazel eyes, his quiet kindness, had left an imprint, but Kate pushed the thought aside. Today was about reclaiming control. She had a high-stakes job to nail, a chance to redesign a penthouse for a wealthy client, and failure wasn't an option. Her career as an interior designer was her lifeline, the one thing Keith's cruelty hadn't touched. With her portfolio tucked under her arm, she stepped into the crisp morning, determined to leave her heartbreak behind. The elevator to the penthouse was a sleek cocoon of glass and steel, rising through the city's elite district with a hum that matched Kate's nerves. She adjusted her skirt, rehearsing her pitch. The client, a mystery figure represented only by a curt email from an assistant, demanded sophistication with warmth. A challenge Kate relished. As the doors slid open, she stepped into a vast foyer, its marble floors gleaming under a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a museum. The space was breathtaking but sterile, all sharp angles and cold whites, begging for her touch. She took a deep breath, ready to impress, when a familiar voice stopped her cold. "Kate!" She froze, her portfolio nearly slipping from her grasp. There, in the center of the sprawling living room, stood Henry Whitaker, Hank, casual in jeans and a gray sweater, a golden retriever bounding at his side. His hazel eyes widened with the same surprise mirrored in her own. "You're my client?" Kate's voice was a mix of disbelief and amusement, the coincidence hitting her like a spark. Hank's grin was boyish, disarming, as he ruffled the dog's fur. "Looks like it. Small world, huh?" Kate laughed, the sound surprising her with its lightness. "Small or just plain crazy," she said, stepping forward. The dog, tail wagging furiously, nudged her hand, and Hank introduced her as Luna, his chief interior critic. The penthouse stretched before them, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a dizzying view of the city. Minimalist furniture dotted the space, but it felt more like a showroom than a home. Kate's fingers itched to transform it, to weave warmth into its bones. Hank led her on a tour, his easy stride contrasting the opulence around them. "I want something that feels lived in," he said, running a hand through his dark hair. "Not like I'm squatting in a magazine spread." Kate nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. Earthy textiles, soft lighting, textures that invited touch. She jotted notes as they moved through the open-plan living area, the sleek kitchen, and a study lined with empty bookshelves. Every room screamed potential, but it was Hank's presence that kept pulling her focus. He was different here, relaxed yet attentive, his questions about her vision sharp and genuine. In the dining area, Kate's heel caught on a plush rug, and she stumbled, her portfolio slipping. Hank's arm shot out, catching her waist, his grip steady but gentle. "Careful," he said, his voice low, a teasing edge to it. Their faces were inches apart, his breath warm against her cheek. Kate's pulse quickened, her skin tingling where his hand rested. "Your floors are a hazard," she quipped, stepping back to regain her composure, but the air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Hank's eyes held hers a moment longer, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them, before he released her with a chuckle. "I'll add that to the redesign list." They settled at a glass table with coffee. Luna sprawled at their feet. Kate spread out her sketches, her passion igniting as she described her vision. Warm oak accents, muted greens, a hearth to anchor the living room. Hank leaned forward, his interest palpable, asking about color palettes and furniture sourcing with a curiosity that surprised her. "You've got a real gift," he said, studying a sketch of a cozy reading nook. "This place needs someone like you to make it a home." His words landed softly, stirring a pride she hadn't felt in weeks. As they talked, Kate noticed the little things. The way Hank's fingers tapped the table when he was thinking, the faint scar above his eyebrow, the ease with which he made her laugh. He wasn't just a client or the stranger from last night. He was someone who saw her, not as a woman broken by betrayal, but as a creator with a spark worth kindling. The realization was disorienting, like stepping into sunlight after a long night. Their meeting stretched past noon, the city humming below. Kate gathered her things, her confidence bolstered by Hank's enthusiasm. "I'll have a full proposal by next week," she promised, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Hank walked her to the elevator, Luna trotting behind. "I'm looking forward to it," he said, his smile warm but tinged with something deeper, something that made her heart skip. As the elevator doors closed, Kate leaned against the wall, her mind buzzing. She'd come to prove herself professionally, but what she'd found was something else entirely, a connection that felt like it had been waiting for her all along. The city sparkled outside, and for the first time in days, Kate felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The late afternoon sun slanted through the penthouse windows, casting golden streaks across the polished floors, where Katherine Ellis knelt, measuring a wall with meticulous care. Her sketchbook lay open beside her, pages brimming with ideas for Hank Whitaker's home. Cozy textures, warm woods, a hearth to anchor the vast space. The work was her sanctuary, a way to stitch herself back together after the chaos of recent weeks. Yet, as she jotted down dimensions, her thoughts kept drifting to Hank. Their meeting yesterday, so unexpected yet electric, had left her unsteady, like a compass, spinning toward an unknown north. His easy laughter, the way his hazel eyes seemed to see straight through her defenses. It was disarming, and Kate wasn't sure she was ready for it. Hank was in the kitchen, the clinking of mugs signaling his return. He'd insisted on coffee breaks during her visits, a ritual that felt less like client courtesy and more like an excuse to linger. Luna, his golden retriever, sprawled nearby, her tail thumping lazily against the floor. Kate glanced up as Hank approached, two steaming mugs in hand, his jeans and sweater a far cry from the tailored suit of their first encounter. "You're working too hard," he said, setting a mug beside her. "Even geniuses need a break." Kate smirked, tucking her tape measure away. "Genius, huh? Flattery won't get you a discount." She took the coffee, its rich aroma grounding her, and settled onto a nearby stool. Hank leaned against the counter, his casual posture belying the intensity of his gaze. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm over the past week, design discussions blending with banter, each moment weaving a thread of connection that Kate both craved and feared. She sipped her coffee, savoring the warmth, and steered the conversation to safer ground. "I'm thinking linen curtains for the dining area," she said. "They'll soften the space without blocking the view." Hank nodded, his eyes tracking her every word. "You've got a way of making empty rooms feel alive," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her cheeks flush. She ducked her head, pretending to study her sketchbook, but the air between them hummed with something unspoken. It was dangerous, this pull, especially when her heart still bore the scars of Keith's betrayal. She couldn't afford to trust so easily, not again. As she reached for a pencil, her elbow brushed a stack of books on the counter, sending them tumbling. "Oh no!" she gasped, lunging to catch them. Hank was faster, his arm shooting out to steady her, his hand grazing her waist. Their eyes locked, inches apart, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the warmth of his touch, the faint cedar scent of his cologne. "You're making a habit of this," he teased, his voice low, but he didn't pull away. Kate's breath hitched, her pulse racing. "Blame your cluttered counters," she shot back, stepping free, though her skin tingled where his hand had been. She bent to gather the books, grateful for the distraction, when something caught her eye, a small, framed photo tucked among the scattered pages. Her fingers froze. The image was faded, a snapshot of two children at a summer camp, their faces smeared with dirt and grins wide as the sky. The girl had pigtails, her green eyes unmistakable. The boy, gap-toothed and lanky, clutched a makeshift fishing rod. Kate's heart stuttered. "Hank," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Is this us? Hank crouched beside her, his expression shifting from confusion to awe as he took the photo. Katie from Camp Willow? His voice was soft, reverent, as if unearthing a buried treasure. Memories flooded back, lazy summers by the lake, secret handshakes, promises scrawled in a notebook to stay friends forever. They'd been inseparable, two kids who found solace in each other until Kate's family moved away, severing the tie. I can't believe it, Hank said, his eyes searching hers. You were right here all this time. Kate clutched the photo, her throat tight. The coincidence felt like fate, a thread tying their past to this moment. We swore we'd find each other again, she said, half laughing, half dazed. Guess we kept that promise. Hank's smile was tender, but there was a weight to it, as if he too felt the gravity of their rediscovery. They sat there, the photo between them, the penthouse fading into the background. Luna nudged Kate's knee, breaking the spell, and they both laughed, the sound easing the intensity. As they resumed their work, the photo sat on the counter, a silent witness. Kate sketched with renewed energy, her ideas flowing freer, as if the past had unlocked something within her. Hank watched her, his questions about fabrics and lighting, laced with a new familiarity, a shared history that made every glance feel deeper. When she packed up to leave, the sun had dipped below the skyline, bathing the city in twilight. Hank walked her to the elevator, his hand brushing hers as he handed back her tape measure. See you tomorrow, Katie, he said, the old nickname a soft echo of their childhood. Kate stepped into the elevator, her heart a tangle of wonder and caution. The doors closed and she leaned against the wall, the photo's image burned into her mind. She'd come to redesign a stranger's home, but what she'd found was a piece of herself she thought she'd lost. The city glittered below, and as the elevator descended, Kate knew this was only the beginning of something she couldn't yet name. The Manhattan skyline shimmered under a veil of dusk, its lights winking like stars against the deepening indigo. Inside Hank Whitaker's penthouse, Katherine Ellis stood by a towering window, her sketchbook open to a half-finished design for a cozy library corner. The space was transforming under her touch. Warm oak shelves now lined the study, and soft green cushions dotted the living area. But tonight, her focus wavered. The faded photo from Camp Willow sat on a nearby table, its image of two grinning kids a quiet reminder of the bond she and Hank had rediscovered. That memory should have been a comfort, a tether to something pure, but instead, it stirred a restless unease in Kate's chest. The closer she grew to Hank, the louder her doubts whispered, coaxed to life by ghosts she thought she'd buried. Hank was across the room, reviewing fabric swatches for the dining chairs, his brow furrowed in mock seriousness. Linen or velvet? He asked, holding up two samples, his hazel eyes catching the lamplight. Kate forced a smile, stepping closer to inspect them. Linen, she said. It's timeless. Her voice was steady, but her thoughts were anything but. Their work sessions had become a delicate dance, design talk interwoven with laughter, stolen glances, and moments that left her breathless, like when their hands brushed while passing a pencil. Each one chipped away at her defenses, and Kate wasn't sure she could afford to let them fall. She'd spent the past week wrestling with the pull of their connection. Hank was different, kind, grounded, with a warmth that made her feel seen in ways Keith never had. Their shared past, unearthed in that photo, felt like fate, a promise that this time trust might not betray her. But doubt was a stubborn shadow. Keith's voice echoed in her mind. You were never enough, and with it, the sting of his public betrayal at La Belle Étoile. What if she was fooling herself again, seeing what she wanted in Hank instead of what was real? Her fears found fuel that morning. At her studio, a colleague had casually mentioned Keith's latest social media post, A photo of him and Vanessa, arms entwined, with a caption that twisted the knife. Found the upgrade I needed. Sorry, not sorry. The comments were vicious, some tagging Kate, calling her a pathetic rebound who'd never keep up. She'd shut her phone off, but the words clung like damp rot, sowing seeds of insecurity. Hank's world, his penthouse, his effortless charm, felt galaxies, apart from her own, and the gap seemed to widen with every step she took toward him. Kate! Hank's voice cut through her spiral. He'd set the swatches down, his gaze searching. You're a million miles away. Everything okay? Luna, sprawled at his feet, lifted her head as if sensing the shift in the air. Kate hesitated, her fingers tightening around her sketchbook. She wanted to brush it off, to keep the moment light, but the weight of her thoughts pressed too hard. Just a long day, she said, her smile brittle. Hank tilted his head, unconvinced, and crossed the room in a few strides. He stopped close enough for her to catch the faint cedar of his cologne, his presence both comforting and unnerving. Talk to me, he said softly. You don't have to carry it alone. The invitation was gentle, but it cracked something open. Kate set her sketchbook down, her hands trembling slightly. It's stupid, she began, her voice low. I saw something today about my ex. He's still out there, making sure I feel small. She swallowed, the admission raw. And I keep wondering if I'm kidding myself, thinking I belong here, with you. Hank's expression darkened, not with anger, but with a quiet resolve. You belong wherever you choose to be, he said, his voice firm. That guy, he's the small one, tearing you down to prop himself up. You're not what he says you are. He reached out, then paused, as if giving her space to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. You're extraordinary, Kate. I've known it since we were kids. His words were a lifeline, but they also terrified her. She wanted to believe him, to let his certainty anchor her, but the scars Keith left ran deep. What if I'm not enough for this? She whispered, gesturing vaguely at the penthouse, at him. Your life, it's so big. I'm just a designer scraping by. Hank's grip tightened, gentle but unyielding. My life's only as big as the people in it, he said, and right now, you're the one making it matter. His eyes held hers, steady and unguarded, and for a moment, Kate felt the shadows retreat. Luna nudged her leg, whining softly, and Kate laughed despite herself, the sound breaking the tension. She bent to pet the dog, grateful for the distraction, but Hank's words lingered, a spark in the dark. They resumed work, but the air felt charged, their conversation quieter, more deliberate. Kate sketched with fierce focus, pouring her uncertainty into her designs, while Hank stayed close, his presence a silent reassurance. As she packed up, the city outside glowed with a restless energy, mirroring her own. Hank walked her to the elevator, his hand brushing her arm as he handed her a forgotten pencil. You're stronger than you think, he said, his voice low. Don't let anyone make you forget that, Kate nodded, her throat tight, and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, she clutched her sketchbook, Hank's words battling the doubts in her mind. She'd survived one storm, but another was brewing, not in the sky, but in her heart. The city pulsed below, and Kate knew the next step would test her courage in ways she wasn't sure she was ready for. The rooftop bar pulsed with the city's heartbeat, its sleek glass railings framing a dazzling panorama of Manhattan's skyline. Katherine Ellis stood by a high table, her fingers tracing the stem of a wine glass, the ruby liquid untouched. The evening air was crisp, laced with a hum of laughter and clinking glasses. But Kate's heart was a storm of its own. Hank Whitaker stood beside her, his presence a quiet anchor, his gray sweater softening the sharp lines of his frame. Their date, meant to be a celebration of her latest design proposal, had been filled with easy banter, his teasing about her obsession, with throw pillows drawing rare, unguarded laughs. Yet, beneath her smile, the doubt stirred and Chapter 5 lingered. Keith's venomous words and the sting of social media barbs casting long shadows over her newfound hope. Kate glanced at Hank, his hazel eyes catching the bar's ambient glow, as he recounted a story about Luna's latest mischief. His warmth was a balm, but the fear of falling too fast, of being hurt again, gnawed at her. She opened her mouth to respond when a familiar voice sliced through the crowd, sharp and venomous. "Well, look who's playing dress up!" Kate's blood ran cold. Keith Langston stood before them, Vanessa clinging to his arm like ivy, her blonde hair gleaming under the string lights. His smirk was a blade, honed by the same cruelty that had shattered Kate at La Belle Étoile. Hank's story trailed off, his posture stiffening as he turned to face the intruder. Kate's grip tightened on her glass, her pulse hammering. Keith's eyes raked over her, then flicked to Hank with mock pity. "Found a new guy already, Kate? Hope he's not as bored as I was." Vanessa's giggle was a high-pitched echo, her gaze dripping with condescension. The words hit like a slap, dredging up every insecurity Kate had wrestled with. Her fear of being not enough, of stepping into a world where she didn't belong. The bar's chatter faded, eyes turning to the unfolding drama, and Kate felt the old urge to flee, to shrink into the shadows. But something held her in place. Hank's hand brushed hers under the table, a subtle gesture that grounded her. She straightened, her emerald eyes flashing with defiance. But before she could speak, Hank stepped forward, his calm demeanor masking a steel edge. "You must be Keith Langston," he said, his voice low, each syllable deliberate. Keith's smirk faltered, confusion flickering as Hank continued. "From the marketing team at Whitaker Innovations, my company." The air shifted, the crowd's murmurs quieting. Keith's bravado crumbled, his face paling as recognition dawned. Vanessa's grip on his arm tightened, her confidence wavering. Kate's breath caught. She'd known Hank was successful, but the weight of his authority wielded so effortlessly stunned her. "I don't tolerate disrespect," Hank said, his gaze locked on Keith. "Not to my employees, and certainly not to Kate. If I hear you speak to her like that again, you're done. Understood?" Keith opened his mouth, but no words came. The threat was quiet, lethal, a promise wrapped in composure. He muttered a curt apology, his eyes darting to Vanessa, who looked suddenly small without her smug veneer. They retreated, swallowed by the crowd, their exit a silent defeat. The bar resumed its rhythm, but Kate's world had tilted. She turned to Hank, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do that." Hank's expression softened, his hand finding hers again, this time openly. "Yes, I did," he said. "No one gets to make you feel less than you are." His words were a vow, and in them, Kate heard the echo of their childhood promises: loyalty, protection, a bond unbroken by time. Her doubts, so heavy moments ago, began to fracture, light seeping through the cracks. They left the bar soon after, the city's neon pulse a vibrant backdrop as they walked to Hank's penthouse. Inside, the familiar warmth of Kate's designs, linen curtains, oak accents welcomed them, Luna bounding over with a joyful bark. Kate sank onto the couch, her heart still racing from the confrontation. Hank sat beside her, his presence steady, but not overbearing. "I'm sorry you had to deal with him again," he said, his voice gentle. "But I meant what I said. You're worth defending." Kate's throat tightened, emotion swelling. "No one's ever stood up for me like that," she admitted, her eyes meeting his. The vulnerability was terrifying, but Hank's gaze held no judgment, only a quiet strength that made her feel safe. She leaned closer, her hand resting on his. "Thank you, Hank, for seeing me." He smiled, a soft curve that warmed the room. "Always, Katie." The old nickname wrapped around her like an embrace, and for the first time, Kate let herself believe she could trust this. Trust him. Luna curled up at their feet, the city humming beyond the windows, and Kate felt a shift, a certainty that whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. The night had tested her, but it had also shown her strength, hers and the man beside her. As they sat in the quiet, hands entwined, Kate knew the past was losing its grip, and something new was taking its place. The Manhattan night unfurled like a velvet curtain, its stars obscured by the city's relentless glow. Inside Hank Whitaker's penthouse, Katherine Ellis stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection a soft silhouette against the glittering skyline. The space had transformed under her hands. Linen curtains framed the view, oak furniture warmed the once sterile rooms, and a hearth flickered with quiet life. Yet tonight, Kate's focus wasn't on her designs, but on the man beside her. Hank's presence, steady and warm, filled the room as palpably as the cedar scent of his cologne. The memory of the rooftop bar, where he'd silenced Keith's cruelty with a single, unyielding command, still thrummed in her veins. That moment had shattered her doubts, leaving only a fragile, exhilarating certainty. She was falling for him, and there was no turning back. Hank was at the kitchen island, arranging takeout containers from their favorite Thai place. His sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms tanned from weekend hikes. Luna, their golden retriever companion, lounged nearby, her eyes tracking Hank's every move in hopes of a stray noodle. "You're slacking on your chopstick skills," he teased, sliding a plate of pad thai toward Kate. She laughed, joining him at the counter, the ease of their banter a balm after weeks of turmoil. Their dates had grown frequent. Strolls through Central Park, quiet dinners, moments where the world faded, leaving only them. Each one wove their childhood bond tighter, a tapestry of trust and tenderness that Kate no longer feared. Yet, as she twirled noodles around her chopsticks, a flutter of nerves stirred. Hank's gaze held a new intensity tonight, his smiles laced with a quiet purpose that set her heart racing. They'd finalized her design proposal earlier, the penthouse now a true home. But Hank had insisted on celebrating, his cryptic, "I have something to show you," lingering in the air. Kate pushed the thought aside, focusing on the spicy tang of her food. But the anticipation was electric, like the city's pulse beyond the windows. After dinner, Hank led her to the living room, where a single lamp cast a golden glow. Luna curled up by the hearth, her soft snores a gentle underscore. Kate settled onto the couch, her fingers brushing the soft throw she'd chosen weeks ago. Hank stood before her, hands in his pockets, his usual ease replaced by a rare hesitance. "Kate," he began, his voice low, "you've changed this place, made it mine in a way I never thought possible." He gestured to the room, but his eyes never left hers. "But it's more than that. You've changed me." Kate's breath caught, her pulse quickening. She opened her mouth to deflect with a joke, but the weight of his words silenced her. Hank stepped closer, his hazel eyes catching the firelight, unguarded and raw. "I've spent years building things, companies, walls, a life that looked perfect from the outside," he said. "But none of it felt real until you walked back into it. That night in the rain, at the camp all those years ago. It's always been you, Katie." The nickname, soft as a memory, unraveled her. Kate's eyes stung, the walls she'd built against love crumbling under his gaze. He reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box, and her world tilted. Kneeling before her, Hank opened it, revealing a delicate diamond ring, its facets catching the light like captured stars. "Katherine Ellis," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I loved you when we were kids. even if I didn't know it then. I love you now, and I want you forever. Will you marry me?" Time stopped. The city's hum faded, the hearth's crackle a distant echo. Kate's heart pounded, every fear, every scar flashing through her mind. Keith's betrayal, her own doubts, the risk of opening herself again. But Hank's eyes held her, a promise of safety, of a future where she'd never be not enough. Tears welled, spilling down her cheeks, but they were born of joy, not pain. "Yes," she whispered, the word a leap, a surrender to something greater than fear. "Yes, Hank." His face broke into a smile, radiant and unguarded, as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, a cool weight that felt like destiny. Hank pulled her into his arms, their lips meeting in a kiss that was soft at first, then deepening with a hunger that spoke of years lost and futures found. Kate clung to him, her fingers tangling in his hair, the world narrowing to the warmth of his embrace, the steady beat of his heart against hers. Luna stirred, letting out a contented huff, and they laughed, the sound bright in the quiet room. They sank onto the couch, hands entwined, the ring catching the firelight. "I was so nervous," Hank admitted, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Thought you might run for the hills." Kate nudged him, her smile teasing. "I'm done running," she said and meant it. The penthouse, once a blank canvas, was now their sanctuary, filled with her designs and their shared dreams. As they talked about the future, the wedding, the life they'd build, Kate felt a peace she'd never known. The city sparkled beyond the windows, its restless energy a mirror to her joy. Keith's shadow was gone, banished by the man who'd seen her worth when she couldn't. Hank's love was a gift, but so was her courage, the leap she'd taken to trust again. The night stretched on, and Kate knew that whatever lay ahead, they'd face it together, their hearts bound by a promise as enduring as the stars. The summer sun dipped low, bathing the garden in a golden haze, its rays weaving through a canopy of fairy lights that twinkled like captured stars. Katherine Ellis stood in a quiet alcove, her reflection shimmering in a tall mirror. Her wedding gown flowed like liquid moonlight, its soft lace hugging her frame before cascading into a delicate train. Her chestnut hair was swept into a loose updo, tendrils framing her face, and her emerald eyes sparkled with a joy she'd once thought impossible. The diamond ring on her finger caught the light, a silent vow from the night Hank Whitaker had knelt before her, offering his heart. That moment, born from a rainy night and a rediscovered past, had led to this, a day where love eclipsed every shadow of doubt. Beyond the alcove, the garden buzzed with anticipation. Guests filled rows of white chairs, their murmurs blending with the rustle of leaves and a string quartet's gentle melody. Kate's brother, Oliver, appeared at her side, his suit crisp, his grin wide, but tinged with emotion. "You look like you stepped out of a fairy tale," he said, his voice thick. Kate laughed, squeezing his arm. "Don't make me cry, Ollie. I've got a whole ceremony to get through." He chuckled, but his eyes glistened, proud of the sister who'd fought through heartbreak to find her home. The music swelled, signaling her cue. Oliver offered his arm, and Kate took a deep breath, stepping into the sunlight. The aisle stretched before her, lined with petals that glowed like embers in the dusk. Faces turned, friends, colleagues, Hank's small circle of trusted confidants. But Kate saw only him. Hank stood at the altar, his tailored suit accentuating his broad shoulders, his hazel eyes locked on her with an intensity that stole her breath. His smile was radiant, unguarded, a beacon that drew her forward. Every step erased the pain of Keith's betrayal, the sting of social media's cruelty, the fear that she'd never be enough. With Hank, She was everything. The officiant's voice was a soft cadence, weaving their story into the vows they'd written. Katherine, do you take Henry to be your husband? To love and honor through all the days of your life? Kate's voice was steady, her heart full. I do. Hank's turn came, his words a promise etched in time. I take you, Katie, to love and honor forever. The word forever hung in the air, a vow that echoed their childhood pact by the lake, now fulfilled in this sacred moment. They slipped rings onto each other's fingers, and when Hank kissed her, it was a seal of every trial they'd overcome. Soft, deep, a world unto itself. The guests erupted in cheers, but Kate felt only Hank, his hands framing her face, his breath warm against her lips. The reception unfolded under a starlit sky, tables adorned with her designs, wildflowers in mason jars, candles flickering in glass. Laughter rang out as Oliver took the microphone, his speech a blend of humor and heart. Hank's terrible at campcrafts, he teased, recalling a lopsided birdhouse from their shared summer. But he's pretty good at loving my sister. The crowd laughed, Hank raising his glass in mock surrender, but his arm around Kate tightened, a silent agreement. Hank's response was brief but poignant, thanking Oliver for the best brother-in-law a guy could ask for, earning a playful groan from the crowd. They danced, Kate's gown swaying as Hank led her across the floor, his hand steady at her waist. You're officially Mrs. Whitaker, he murmured, his voice low, teasing. Kate smiled, her cheek against his. And you're stuck with me, Mr. Whitaker. The music carried them, the world fading until it was just them, two souls, bound by a chance encounter and a love that defied the odds. Keith's absence was a quiet victory. Whispers among guests hinted he'd left the city, his career in tatters after Hank's warning. The media frenzy that followed their engagement, speculating about Kate's gold-digging motives, had faded, silenced by Hank's fierce defense and Kate's quiet strength. Her design business thrived, with clients clamoring for the warmth she'd brought to Hank's penthouse. A new project loomed, a restaurant she'd decorate, a dream she'd shared with Hank over late-night talks, now within reach. As the night waned, Kate and Hank slipped to a quiet corner, Luna bounding over to nuzzle their hands. The penthouse awaited them, a home shaped by her vision and their love. I never thought a rainy night would lead here, Kate said, her head resting on his shoulder. The city's glow, a backdrop. Hank kissed her forehead, his voice soft. The best storms bring the clearest skies. They stood there, hands entwined, the future stretching before them. Kate's heart was full, not just with love, but with courage. The kind that had carried her from a broken sidewalk to this moment. Hank was her partner, her childhood friend, her forever. As the stars peeked through the city's haze, Kate knew no storm could dim their light. Their story, born from a single act of kindness, was now eternal, a testament to love's power to heal and endure. What a journey Kate and Hank have taken us on, from a stormy night to a love that shines brighter than the Manhattan skyline. We hope their story of second chances and unbreakable bonds warmed your heart. What did you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did you cheer for Kate's courage or swoon over Hank's proposal? Rate the story from 0 to 10 and let us know where you're listening from. Your support means the world, so thank you for joining us on this heartfelt ride. Subscribe and hit the bell to catch our next tale of love and triumph. Until then, keep believing in new beginnings. We'll see you soon.